Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and there's been a lot of news lately, but not much news about Julian Assange. I wonder why. I mean, has anyone else noticed how the news cycle works? You hear about something for, a few days, and it's huge in the news, and people wonder, how did that make it into the news? And then it just disappears from the news completely, and you don't hear about it again. And that's definitely the case with Jeffrey Epstein, and that's definitely the case with Julian Assange, who, by the way, is still in prison, and very few are doing anything or saying anything about it. It's not in the news cycle. But today there was a bit of a push in the news cycle because it has been hitting headlines that Pamela Anderson is kind of going the rounds and defending Julian Assange, and she got in a heated argument with Meghan McCain, good old John McCain's daughter, on The View. And usually I try to avoid the incessant bickering and rooster screeching of The View. But I saw this article. I had to check this out. I can't play the video for copyright reasons. YouTube will take our channel down if we do that. But nonetheless, it's an interesting video. And as this article from Zero Hedge says, a breath of fresh air as Pamela Anderson takes Meghan McCain to task over U.S. war crimes. And as the article says, Friday's edition of The View became the site of an argument about war crimes, U.S. military, and WikiLeaks as actress Pamela Anderson and program co-host Meghan McCain battled during Anderson's appearance on the hit daytime talk show. And it was very, very entertaining. I never thought I'd see the day when Pamela Anderson and McCain were arguing on The View anyway, about war crimes. The dispute began when View hosts attacked Anderson for her unwavering support of Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. McCain pounced, claiming that Assange is merely a cyber terrorist. Well, what do you consider a terrorist these days anyway? When you consider the McCain family, I won't even go there because YouTube has not been nice to people who attacked McCain after he passed away, but if anyone's going to be called a terrorist. Anyway, as it says, and I quote, he hacked information, McCain said. His leaks included classified documents that put our national security at risk, our military, and the lives of spies and diplomats at risk. And Anderson replied by pointing out that the U.S. military, not WikiLeaks, is responsible for the deaths of many innocent people around the world. And might I add, millions and millions, over 100 million over the last century. Oh, man, that's just being conservative about it. Continuing on, it says, and I quote, how many people have the American government killed innocently, and how many has WikiLeaks, Anderson asked. The military has put many innocent lives at risk. That response spurred a cheer from the audience. Well, good for that, I guess. Continuing on, it says, and I quote, oh, calm down, sir, McCain snapped at one boisterous supporter. I guess he was clapping too loudly, because I listened to the video, and it was just a guy who was clapping. How dare he? Calm down. But can you imagine? She makes a point, people clap, and she's like, calm down. Don't clap at me. Anyway, continuing on, it says, later in the discussion, McCain extolled the virtues of American spies and intelligence officers and asked if Anderson was concerned for their safety from Assange leaking information to the public. And I quote, well, there's no evidence he put anyone at risk, said Anderson, and I think people like Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning are heroes. Continuing on, it says, progressive reaction online for the argument focused on Anderson's effective batting away of McCain's right-wing talking points. And I quote, what a breath of fresh air, Splinter managing editor Catherine Kruger wrote in her recap of the argument. And I quote, Pamela Anderson talking about how war crimes need to be punished, and of course, Meghan McCain is crying about it, said Twitter user Miller Highlife. In a rare omission, Meghan McCain did not mention that her father was late warhawk John McCain during the discussion. Yeah, I'm not even going to go there. But I mean, look, I'm going to continue on with this story in a moment. But first of all, they keep claiming that Assange put people's lives at risk. There's no evidence of that. There really isn't any evidence of that. But what there is evidence of is the U.S. military-industrial complex killing millions of people. Talk about putting lives at risk and then arming and funding these people that they go in and use as an excuse to go and attack. And then end up killing 90% innocent people again. I mean, it's so annoying to watch this play out over and over again. And then you hear these moronic points about how Assange risked people's lives. So he's risking possibly lives. I'm not, saying that it should happen, but when you're risking people's lives who are killing millions of people, about 50% of them children, then what side are you on in that discussion? It's just so crazy. We need to protect freedom in America. Well, what freedom do you have left when you're murdering children? What freedom do you have left when you have to go into deficit spending and printing out vast amounts of currency like the Romans did right before they fell, might I add, like I've recently reported in a report on the fall of Rome, out of Rome. I mean, they just printing all this money and stealing from people, enforcing legal tender debt usury on the populace under the social contract, quote unquote, that no one ever signed at all ever in their life, just born into it. And then extorted and then funding this massive war machine that kills millions of people, that keeps perpetuating the problem so that they can prolong the problem more and more so, and create a bigger power complex of fear and destruction. So it's really disheartening to see anyone still at this point in time parroting these viewpoints. But it's good to see someone like Pamela Anderson, who has, she might not be as well known and popular as she used to be years ago, but nonetheless, she's using her voice and her stature to spread some good information to some extent. And by the way, Meghan McCain said, I think it was actually, I forget her name. I try not to remember, obtain or contain memories of the names and waste space in my brain of the people on The View. But one of them was saying that, didn't Assange give us Trump? And Pamela Anderson was like, no, I think Hillary Clinton gave us Trump. And again, it's like, well, why didn't he release stuff on Trump? And she was like, well, if he had stuff on Trump, he would have released it. Anyway, it's ridiculous. Let's get back to the articles here in the news, because, well, it's rare to find any news on Julian Assange these days. But this is from a while ago, back around his arrest. Julian Assange is suffering psychological torture, UN expert says. And again, this is more evidence that he's being tortured, he's being used, he's being drugged, poisoned, etc., which we heard about months ago, and then news went silent. This is from May 31st, 2019, where it says, a United Nations expert on torture said on Friday that an examination of the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in a British prison showed an alarming deterioration in his mental and physical state, and he sharply rebuked Britain, Sweden, and the United States for ganging up on Mr. Assange. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture and Ill Treatment, Nils Melzer, said the examination in early May revealed that Mr. Assange's capacity to focus and coordinate have been clearly affected by his imprisonment. And I quote, he was extremely jumpy and stressed, Mr. Meltzer said in an interview. It's difficult to have a structured conversation with him. There's so much going on in his mind, it's difficult to have a dialogue. Furthermore, he said in a statement, Mr. Assange should not be extradited to the United States, where he faces charges of conspiracy to hack into a Pentagon computer. He said that the cumulative effects of Mr. Assange's punishment can only be described as psychological torture. And I think... There's been evidence that he's been drugged. He was in hospital. He wasn't able to speak. He wasn't able to say words for a while. And it was talked about by a few people, but again, completely ignored afterwards. And I think this is really alarming, to say the least, that no one has been talking about this at all in recent days. The fact that he was in this embassy for all these years, not in good health, and this notion that he was hacking anyone, he was passing on information that was given to him, which is what journalists do. So what point are we at in history where someone that passes on information, whatever happened to the Pentagon Papers, remember way back when, you get to this point where you claim that someone passing on information that's truthful, that shows and details innocent journalists being killed, like in the helicopter attack, which is one of many examples, and people getting murdered and children getting killed. You get to this point where that isn't somehow infuriating people, but the person passing on the information is, and he needs to be imprisoned. That tells you about the Orwellian society we live in today. So yeah, there's more examples of, Meghan McCain going, oh, he's a cyber terrorist. What do you call a cyber terrorist? Someone that's a journalist that's sharing real information? Oh, it affected people, it hurt people, blah, blah, blah. What about the millions of people who've been killed? What about all of the people who were murdered and killed in these examples that he just shared with the public? What side are people on? they're so often like parrots on the side of the collectivist paradigm, military-industrial complex that just props itself up by causing problems, coming in, creating a reaction, fear among the masses, and then coming in as a solution. Problem, reaction, solution, repeat for eternity. It's ridiculous. It's disgusting. And how many people need to die before people stop parroting the slave racket government talking points? It's sick. Recent news that's also come out about Assange from The Local. See, again, these aren't mainstream sites. So Swedish prosecutors questioned 2 new witnesses in Assange probe, and we can't forget that Edward Snowden is still hiding away, and Chelsea Manning is constantly in and out of prison, over and over and over again. And you have to question why isn't anyone talking about that? That should be one of the biggest stories of a century, honestly, and no one's talking about it. Nobody is talking about the real problems that face us today, where we cannot even spread information without being muzzled, imprisoned for sharing information on people getting murdered by the government. How far have we fallen, folks? And of course, they continuously push towards new wars, Syria, etc. Iran. There's still stuff going on in Yemen. We see those problem, reaction, solution, repeat scenarios play out over and over again. What happens? Well, let's see. We go back to World War I, the sinking of Lusitania after the Fed was conceived, and then vast deficit spending props up the Fed. The printing presses go to task, printing way more IOUs than they have gold, and then you move into the days of FDR. You have, for example, him arming and funding Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam in the very early days of the revolution as French soldiers were being killed over there. And now the French soldiers were doing terrible things, but so did the national communists over there, obviously. And then you prop up this paradigm, and then in the 1960s, you end up creating this vast problem, but then the U.S. attacks their own ship and goes to war with Vietnam against the same people they armed and funded. They armed and funded the Ba'athist Party to go against Iran. They armed and funded, here's one that goes back again to World War II. They armed and, they funded and helped prop up Hitler against the communists. Then they helped prop up the USSR and Stalin, who killed way more people, not justifying anything. They're both horrible human beings, if you can call them that, but propped up the USSR against Hitler. And then they come in and prop up the Mujahideen in the 70s, again, which became Al-Qaeda, against the USSR. They create the problem, reaction, solution for eternity. And then people like Julian Assange are attacked for calling things out as he sees them. The Taliban met in the White House, got armed and funded. ISIS got armed and funded by the U.S. government. I mean, how long will this go on? Currently, the Ukrainian government is getting arms from the United States government in order to go against Russian, quote-unquote, backed rebels. So it's just, you can only imagine what that's going to turn into several years into the future. There is this conspiracy, a very real one, to create problems, to create people, create a perpetual environment of subservience and fear and stupidity and weakness and dependence. And that's what we're seeing play out. So every day you don't see something in the news about Julian Assange, I highly recommend you share an article, share his picture, say Julian Assange is still in prison. Julian Assange may not actually get extradited for a couple years now. The courts have been confused in actually putting a concise date on the potential extradition of Julian Assange. We don't know. And I mean, people say trust the plan. Well, trust what plan? You don't know the plan. The military-industrial complex is a lot smarter than you think. They're evil, but they're very smart. And that's the most dangerous paradigm you can imagine, is evil people that are intelligent. And they are creating this problem. Now, they aren't smart enough to see that they will destroy themselves, like Rome destroyed themselves, like Greece destroyed themselves, like Egypt destroyed themselves, like every empire of the past has destroyed themselves. But nonetheless, a lot of people are going to die first. A lot of truths are going to be muzzled. A lot of people are going to be muzzled. A lot of people are going to be censored, like us here at WAN, like so many other independent medias, which is why we need your help more than ever. And so many more people will be tortured in the way that Julian Assange has been as we get to this precipice, this cliff. And where we go after that cliff is up to all of you. Where we end up in the future comes down to the individuals watching this video. How will you take action as an individual? How will you spread information? How will you innovate? How will you create new great marvels to replace the old guard systems that enslave us? That comes down to you. And also, this information war cannot be lost. We must work as hard as we can to get our information out and tell the truth to the masses before it's too late. Because the vast majority of people still aren't aware of all this stuff, but there has been enough of a coalition from independent medias over the last 10 years especially that I believe actually helped, push down the potential of all-out wars a bit more. I mean, like, if the Iraq war started around the time of, YouTube becoming a big thing, which it didn't really until around 2009 to 2011. If the Iraq war came to be around that period, it would have never gone on as long as it has, and it probably would have ended quite soon because people naturally show opposition to war. There are those few that parrot the establishment line, but most people are against these wars. It's gone on for eternity, and nothing's ever changed, like democracy, going back to ancient Greece. Well, maybe this new public, maybe change we can believe in, all that kind of stuff, and it just perpetuates forever. So, again, if we are able to spread information at a greater scale, we can actually avoid wars. We can actually avoid the paradigm of the government collectivist construct of the international community trying to create vast stupidity and weakness and dependence. It comes down to you guys. It comes down to you being able to evade this very real pertinent problem that we all face. We can and we will win the information war, but first we got to get louder. First we need to spread this information like Julian Assange, who again is still in prison. Share that information. I know I'm rambling here, but I think I'm just thinking, like, it's so amazing that I'm still talking about this in the end of 2019. We cannot put up with this much longer, and I don't think we will. But again, we gotta see a paradigm shift in the near future down the line. It's more important to have an evolution than a revolution. We need to evolve rather than revolt. Revolting usually ends with a different form of government forming and creating the same problems again perpetually. So anyways, I appreciate everyone tuning in. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated as we are so heavily demonetized and shadow banned to a crazy extent. We have lost about 80% of our reach since the beginning of this year as they rip away subscribers, etc. It has gotten out of control and it's becoming more and more difficult to stay alive here on World Alternative Media, bringing you guys free content every day. You can also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out on all these other alternatives like Subscribestar, where we are doing subscriber only content for people at the $4.99 US a month tier and up. We really appreciate it. You could tip us on there and pledge anything, but from $4.99 and up, we are giving people subscriber only content that you won't find here on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, there are so many alternatives for YouTube these days, including BitChute, which we are on at World Alternative Media, as well as, of course, the new flote.app, flote.app, where they are truly replacing all of these social medias, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr, Reddit, and of course, Twitch and Patreon, all in one place, and it is truly incredible what they are doing. We are moving over there in mass, as well as BitChute, BitTube, Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, all those other places, as well as PocketNet. We are on as well at World Alternative Media. There's so many options today, and we're trying to get into as many of them as possible because we need to back ourselves up. We are winning this information war, but we are getting to a point where they are cracking down more desperately than ever, and we got to do whatever we can to stay alive as it's getting more and more difficult all the time. We also have events coming up, including Anarchadelphia 2019, which will be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in September. Check out thestateofanarchy.com and anarchadelphia.com. Linked below, use promo code WAM, W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to this amazing conference as anarchy is going viral. Also, make sure to check out the Winnipeg Crypto Conference in October. Also, use promo code WAM, another great event with amazing speakers, and of course, Anarchapulco, the one and only, in February 2020, which you can also use promo code WAM for WAM and save 10%. There's so many things that you can do to help independent media, including just pressing like, sharing, clicking the notification button, doing whatever you can to help keep this free information alive that's alternative to the mainstream. Anyway, until next time, thanks for watching, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Bye.